Milling Through History presents The Prelude to the Civil War. When it comes to Kansas, many people might go ahead and think about Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. However, historians look upon Kansas with a different name, that being Bleeding Kansas. It was the prelude to the Civil War and gave everyone in the nation a fairly good idea of exactly what was to come in store with the impending battle between the North and the South. However, how did it all begin? Well, in 1820, the Missouri Compromise was signed, which stated that there would be an equal number of free and slave states in the Union. And, as the country was moving westward, slavery could not go above the line of 3630, aside from the state of Missouri. For a brief period of time, there was an uneasy peace between North and South, as at least everyone knew that there would be an equal number of free and slave states. However, as westward expansion continued to go forward, one of the things that came rather apparent was that when the United States went to war against Mexico, new territories would be added, and thus the spread of settlers going from the east to the west would mean new states would be formed. In May of 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed, as the new territory that was being taken over by the Union would be cut in half into two different groups, the Kansas Territory and the Nebraska Territory. The author of the plan, Stephen Douglas, foresaw that Nebraska would be a quick, easy, free state, as its position, being far north, would go ahead and bring many northern and abolitionist settlers into that state. His prediction was correct. He also had predicted that Kansas, being right next to Missouri, would be more likely a slave state, and therefore keep the balance of both northern and southern states in the Union. However, the big problem with Kansas is that it was over the 3630 line. As such, this would go ahead and ensure that many northerners would look at Kansas as an opportunity to go ahead and tip the scale of free versus slave states. Now, early elections within Kansas brought to light the flaws in Douglas's plans, as Southern sympathizers from Missouri would flood the border and would fraudulently vote within Kansas's early elections. Abolitionist supporters would be known within the state as free soilers, and when they would come into Kansas, they would bring with them what was called Beecher's Bibles, better known to many people as the Sharp's rifle. Now, many voting districts within Kansas would oftentimes see surges of population, and as a result, these early elections were oftentimes declared fraudulent, mainly because the number of voters just did not match up with the voting books. When the first legislature of Kansas was formed, a second legislature, made up primarily of free soilers, was built and was eventually even declared insurrectionist by President Franklin Pierce. Attempts to go ahead and pass a state constitution and send it off to Washington, D.C. for ratification and thus entry into the country as a new state oftentimes proved very difficult, as the pro-slavery legislature would send forward their constitution, better known as the Compton Constitution, while the Free Soiler legislature would send forward three different constitutions. All of them would find themselves being stuck in committee and not being allowed to pass forward, mainly because at the time the Senate was in control of the South. As such, with Southern influence being held there, any hope for Kansas to come into the country as a free state was next to impossible. Tensions, though, would finally hit a boiling point, as on November the 21st, 1855, the first fatality of Kansas would occur, as Franklin Coleman would kill Charles Dow, a free stater. Coleman was never arrested for the crime of murder. Instead, it was another free stater who was arrested, and upon seeing the corruption that was occurring, many other free soilers would go to the jail, break out the falsely arrested man, and escort him to safety. The town of Lawrence, Kansas became the center of future conflict, as it was sacked by pro-slavery militiamen on May the 21st, 1856. But perhaps most notorious to Bleeding Kansas was the name John Brown, an abolitionist who immediately went to Kansas with his sons, and in order to go ahead and, as he put it, bring forth the will of God, would proceed to kill pro-slavery individuals with broadswords, hacking them to death, and becoming a rather notorious outlaw within the region. On July 4th, 1856, the United States Army would send out 500 men into the territory to disband the Free State Legislature. And in October of that year, John W. Geary would take over as territorial governor and would create a fragile peace within the territory. Between 1856 and 1859, though, John Brown still remained rather active within Kansas, so active that the United States would continuously send soldiers into Kansas to try to keep the peace. In fact, by the time of the eve of the Civil War, the vast majority of the Army of the United States was in Kansas. And it would not be until 1859, though, after John Brown left Kansas, that things would finally calm down. When Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the United States in 1860, 7 southern states would secede from the Union, and upon their departure from the Senate, almost immediately northern states would call forward for the ratification of the Kansas Constitution, and Kansas would go ahead and be admitted to the Union as a free state. Missouri would attempt to secede from the Union and join the Confederacy. However, pro-Unionist forces flooded into the state and was able to keep it as part of the Union. As a result of this, while Kansas had been the initial battleground of the war between the North and the South, the epicenter of guerrilla warfare would shift, going from Kansas to its neighbor to the east, Missouri, and thus go ahead and create a rather difficult area of the war that would occur from 1861 to 1865. Now be sure to click like, share, and subscribe for future episodes of Milling Through History, and leave comments below for future episodes ideas. And be sure to take a look at our suggested reading page.